All right, welcome to this explainer. If you're someone who loves cutting through the noise and getting straight to the cold, hard facts, well, you are in exactly the right place today. We're going to take a journey from spooky maritime folklore straight into hard, statistical reality. We're talking about a patch of ocean that has inspired just countless books, movies, and late-night debates. But instead of getting lost in the myths like so many people do, we're actually going to look at the data and the earth science.
Because we really have to ask, how did an unofficial patch of ocean become the absolute deadliest legend on Earth? It's a wildly fascinating question, right? And we're going to systematically dismantle the world's most famous conspiracy theory using science, historical context, and modern maritime data. By the end of this explainer, I promise you, you're going to see this infamous stretch of water in a completely new and much more accurate light.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1, a geography of myth. Where is it exactly?
But before we can even talk about what supposedly happens out there, we really need to look at the boundaries, or, the lack of them. The first major problem with this entire legend is just defining it. The Bermuda Triangle is an entirely unofficial region of the North Atlantic Ocean. It's roughly bounded by the southeastern U.S. coast, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. And I really want to emphasize that word unofficial, because this famous geographic anomaly, it doesn't actually exist on any legitimate map. It is completely unrecognized as a location by the United States government.
And what's really wild here is the sheer scale of the discrepancy. When folks try to actually pin down the triangle's boundaries, the estimates are all over the place. They range anywhere from 500,000 square miles all the way up to 1.5 million square miles. That is a glaring, literally 1 million square mile margin of error. Think about that logically for a second. It is incredibly difficult to track accurate numbers of fatalities and disappearances when the borders of the area just keep constantly shifting around to fit whatever spooky narrative someone is trying to sell.
Moving chronologically here, let's hit Section 2, infamous vanishments in history.
So while the borders themselves might be totally made up, the historical tragedies that happened there were very, very real. The seeds of this mystery actually began about half a millennium ago. Back in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed right through this area, specifically the Sargasso Sea, and he reported that his compass was acting strangely. He also described seeing this weird, mysterious light on the horizon that he said looked like a small wax candle lifting up in the distance. And when you take 500-year-old spooky anecdotes like that and start combining them with modern tragedies, the myth really begins to take shape.
And that brings us to a genuinely heartbreaking piece of history. March 1918. The USS Cyclops, this massive 542-foot-long Navy cargo ship, just vanished without a trace. She was carrying over 300 men and 10,000 tons of manganese ore. As U.S. President Woodrow Wilson said at the time, "Only God and the sea know what happened to the great ship." It perfectly captures the sheer bewilderment of the era. I mean, the ship was fully equipped to send an SOS distress call, but she never did. To this day, it remains the largest loss of life in U.S. naval history that wasn't directly related to combat.
But the tragedies weren't just limited to the water. Fast forward to December 1945. A training mission known as Flight 19 took off from Florida. It consisted of 5 Navy torpedo bombers carrying 40 men in total. Up in the air, the mission leader's compass appeared to malfunction, and they became severely, hopelessly lost. Their chilling final transmission, "It looks like we are entering whitewater, we are completely lost," were the very last words heard before they ditched at sea. And to make a terrible situation even worse, a 13-man rescue plane that was sent out to find them, it completely disappeared that very same day.
Now for Section 3, the wild conspiracy theories.
Because those genuine, unexplained tragedies, they were eventually completely hijacked by pop culture and Cold War-era paranoia. In 1964, a writer in Argosy magazine officially coined the catchy term the deadly Bermuda Triangle. But the frenzy spread like wildfire in 1974 with Charles Berlitz's book, which sold an astonishing 20 million copies. Berlitz pointed to the lack of distress calls from vessels like the Cyclops and used it to suggest these just wild theories. He's talking the lost city of Atlantis pulling ships down, undersea portals transcending time and space, and yet, even extraterrestrial abductions. The lack of actual evidence didn't stop the theories, it literally fueled them.
So let's bring it back to reality. Section 4, Science, Storms, and Magnetism.
It is officially time to step away from the science fiction and look at the plausible, earth science answers that researchers actually study. Let's demystify this whole compass malfunction myth right now. A compass points to magnetic north, right? While geographic true north is static.
The variation between those 2 points is called magnetic declination. Navigators have to constantly compensate for this. Interestingly enough, there is an agonic line where true and magnetic north perfectly align, and while this line used to pass right through the triangle, it actually now falls over in the Gulf of Mexico. So, the real takeaway here? Human calculation errors regarding magnetic declination likely doomed both Columbus's initial confusion and Flight 19. In fact, transcripts actually show the Flight 19 pilot thought he was over the Florida Keys when he was really near the Bahamas. So it was a tragic navigational error, not some paranormal event.
Now take those totally understandable navigational errors and combine them with some very real, truly terrifying natural hazards. First off, this region sits squarely in Hurricane Alley. Second, the Gulf Stream travels along the western edge of the triangle, moving incredibly fast. We're talking up to 4 or 5 knots. To put that into perspective, that's about 300 times faster than the Amazon River. That current alone can push ships hundreds of miles off course and instantly erase any floating wreckage. Add in the documented reality of rogue waves that can reach up to 100 feet tall, and even theoretical environmental factors like explosive methane gas blowouts from the ocean floor. The ocean right here is inherently treacherous, plain and simple.
Which brings us to the climax of all this. Section 5, the fabulously unremarkable truth.
When marine researchers actually sat down and analyzed over 150,000 marine casualty records from 1982 to 2015, they narrowed it down to about 9,000 relevant incidents globally. Guess how many occurred inside the Bermuda Triangle? Only 361. That is a tiny 4% of the total, which perfectly mirrors the global averages for any busy body of water. And here is the most important fact of the whole explainer. Out of all those modern incidents, absolutely 0 were classified as mysterious disappearances. Not a single one.
Let's zoom in even closer on that, to a number that is just absolutely staggering, 0.02%. According to a 2021 report utilizing data from Lloyd's List, which is a major global shipping publication, 8,634 boats passed through the Bermuda Triangle in one single year. Out of those thousands and thousands of voyages, there were only 2 casualties. 2. That's a 0.02% casualty rate.
And here's the final nail in the coffin for the conspiracy theories. Globally, about 1.8% of all vessels experience some sort of casualty during their voyage. In the Bermuda Triangle, the rate is 90 times lower than that global average. Aviation data from the National Transportation Safety Board tells the exact same story. Most accidents happen during routine takeoffs and landings, usually due to bad weather decisions, just like anywhere else on Earth. You are statistically safer traveling through the Bermuda Triangle than you are in most other oceanic regions on the planet. Actually, the worst areas for shipping losses over the past decade are the South China Sea and the East Mediterranean. The Triangle, it doesn't even make the top 10.
So at the end of the day, the truth is fabulously unremarkable. The tragedies of the USS Cyclops and Flight 19, they were devastating, absolutely. But they were the result of severe weather, turbulent currents, and tragic human error, not aliens, and definitely not Atlantean portals. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. In a world full of genuine uncertainties, do you find comfort in the fact that this legendary, deadly zone is actually just a thoroughly mundane stretch of ocean? Or is there a tiny part of you that's a little disappointed the magic isn't real? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the